Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and anyone in between, welcome back to another episode of the Manic Noize podcast. We're up to episode 26. I'm fucking stoked about this one. I got to chat to Andy Dowling. I've known Andy for a number of years. He's the bass player for Lorde, one of Australia's most well-known traditional metal, hard rock, power metal bands. They started out as Dungeon, had a career for fucking, 17 years or something. Changed the name to Lorde, and they've been going from strength to strength. Oh, fucking Jesus Christ, Andy. What have you done to me? Strength to strength. We got there in the end. They've just released a new album live at Progpower from their headlining set over at the Progpower Festival a couple of years back. You can get it as a digital video or you can buy the CD. Andy is also the host of the Andy Social podcast. He's talked to everybody from, was it Vinny Appice or Carmine Appice? Fuck. One of the Appices who played for Black Sabbath. Leroy Loggins who played for the Brisbane Bullets. Some cunt that used to do The Price is Right. He's talked to pilots, astrophysicists, all sorts of weird shit. It's a really cool show, so check it out. He's also got another podcast, which we do talk about a little bit, but we basically go all over the fucking place, called Self-Starter, which is about people starting their own businesses and things like that. Really cool dude. We got his opinion on my 2-year-old niece's chances in the music industry. We talked about ugly babies and why ugly baby photos shouldn't be allowed on Facebook. A lot of important issues as usual. So please enjoy it with Andy Dowling from Lorde, Self-Starter Podcast, and the Andy Social Podcast. Please, if you like the show, leave a 5-star rating, follow us on whatever app you use, say hello, say you like it, tell your nan, and jerk off in private. Thank you.
Podcast initiation complete. Warning. This episode may cause brain damage. Manic Noize.
Good afternoon.
Hey, what's happening, man? How are you?
Yeah, good yourself.
Not too bad. Had an interesting few days, but I'm alive, you know?
Yeah. Okay, well, that's the main thing.
Yeah, well, I had somebody shit in my car yesterday. You know, you don't get that every day.
Was it somebody of an age where shitting in a car would be mildly acceptable, or was it a little bit past that?
A bit past that, yeah. Well, look, I'll give the kid a concession. He's got special needs, but I work with kids from a range of like 1 to 10. 10 being completely like nothing could be worse in their life and he's probably a 4. And he's well beyond the don't shit in people's cars standard of disability, but that's how he chose to show his affection towards me yesterday.
Far out, well.
Yeah.
Hopefully most of it was contained within whatever he was wearing.
It was, yeah. And there's a place here called SciTech, which is like a scientific kids thing, and I took him there, and we'd been there 40 minutes before I realised, that smells him. Like, I
tell you what, mate, you need to pitch this for like a TV series. I think it's sort of like Jim Jeffries. What was his show in the US? Legit or something like that. Yeah, something along those lines.
Oh man,
classic.
Yeah, well, I there's this comedy room over here called Oceans, which is notoriously it's just death. Every gig is horrible, and I had that gig that night. And I just went, oh, well, I always bomb and I'm fucking angry. And all I did was talk about this kid shitting in my car. I won $150. So, you know, maybe people should shit in my car more often.
I love it.
Oh, fuck. All right, man.
All right.
So we're trying to work around my technological retardation here a little bit. But I always start the show off with something retarded I found from the internet. But this time... I've actually got something, it's quite sweet. It's a clip I recorded when I was chatting to my little niece who's 2. And you're a professional musician and she's singing a song and I just want to hear what you think of it, see if she's got any skills. She's only 2, but I just kind of want to see if you think she's got a future in the biz, you know.
All right, well, let me see if I can get this loaded up.
All right, we'll do it. Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll sync the shit. It's like 50 seconds. I think you're the man to give me the thumbs up or thumbs down. If she's not going to be a good musician, we'll just adopt her out or something.
The anticipation is killing me.
Yeah, it's up to you, man. She's either going to have a loving family or live in an orphanage. So I think keep that in mind.
The pressure's on. Well, hang on. My laptop's shitting itself. Okay, hang on.
It's all good.
Where are we?
I haven't made this easy.
No, not at all. That's all right. We're talking from opposite ends of the country, so we've got to try and get technology to help us out a bit here.
Yeah.
All right, okay, I'm going to press play and listen to this.
Right.
All right.
Hello.
Five little ducks.
5 little ducks?
Oh, 5 little ducks. 5 little ducks went out one day over else in far away.
Is this a progressive
Mommy
version?
duck said, fuck, fuck, fuck.
What?
And Daddy duck said, fuck, fuck, fuck. Oh, 4 little ducks came back.
Hey, good
Yeah,
job.
I couldn't have scripted that.
What did the ducks say?
Quack, quack, quack. Quack, quack, quack.
Quack, quack, quack. Good job.
Encouraging.
Oh,
Absolutely. I love the encouragement.
But I was just recording, like, I don't see her very often, so I wanted to get it to do some sound bites saying the name of the podcast and some stupid shit, and then I just said, sing some songs, and then she comes out with, the mother duck said, fuck, 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 fuck.
It reminds me of I don't know if you've seen the Borat skit when he was still on LEG, and he's at some rowing club thing, and he's sitting with an old guy, and he's like sort of, you know, he comes from sort of this prestigious background, very sort of affluent, and he's trying to explain what's about to happen. And there's 2 boats racing. This is from what I can recall anyway. I could get it completely wrong, but one's called the Bucks and the other one's called something else. And he's like, and so Borat starts yelling out, "Go the Bucks! Go the Bucks! Go the motherfucks!" And the old guy's just like shitting himself. Goes, no. He's like, "Go the you motherfucks! You motherfucks!" That's what I thought. So I think I'm very impressed that she's able to I use this wanky term once in a blue moon. I call it cross-pollinate.
Oh,
and
thanks.
she can cross-pollinate between 2 different worlds there. She's tapping into the obvious children's market, but she's tapping into a little bit more of the sort of the older demographic of some adult comedy.
Yeah,
so,
a bit of Jim Jeffries in there.
Absolutely. So, yeah, the future's bright for her.
And I'm looking forward to the day when she's 21 and I can trawl this out and say, hey, guess what? You're a star.
That's the power of technology these days. I mean, everyone's capturing everything. I mean, back in the day, you'd have to have like this, you know, overly expensive and clunky camcorder or a dictaphone with a cassette or something like that, and no one had the time. So it was really it was like funny home videos, and that was about all you had. And it was really you had to be right place, right time. But now you record everything. So I'd hate to be someone turning 21 in about 20 years time, because the whole life's going to be in front of them.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a 5-minute video. You'd have to sit there for 4 days.
Yeah,
it'd be like the old movie marathons when you're at high school.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're there until 6 a.m. in the morning. You're not moving.
Oh, when I was a kid, you actually had to, it was for events. Like, shit happened. Like, you're turning 10, we'll take a photo of that. Or there's something happened. Whereas now, like, I've got people I've had to unfollow on Facebook because of too many kid photos, and I've also got others I've unfollowed because of ugly kid photos. I don't dislike your kid, but I don't want to look at it.
Oh, you're speaking my language. I have a very unofficial rule. I don't really articulate it, a little bit to my wife, but I basically, anyone that's posting baby photos, they're gone. Because there's some people that I absolutely love and like really good friends, people I've known for years and years and years, and I'd hate to unfollow them just because of their disgustingly horrible, irritating, fugly little spawn.
Yeah.
But you end up disconnecting from someone over something like that, and I'm the bad person, of course. It's not the parent that's just forcing their child to be in everyone else's face.
No, exactly.
No, yeah, I don't want to be the bitter person or the person that's inappropriate.
Well, I
but,
get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on point. I think like, if you've got
Yeah.
shitty genes, don't breed. That's why I haven't had kids. The world doesn't need more of me.
Well, unfortunately, some poor kids, and I always feel sorry for the kids because they don't know any better. They come into the world, they've got a hard road ahead of them. Some of those ones that have got overly wide foreheads, and the gaps between their eyes are a little bit too wide, as opposed to like sort of the average Joe out there in the street, and you sort of just look at them and go, oh, you're probably going to be the nicest kid in the world, but geez, you've got an uphill battle ahead of you. And I just think, I feel so bad shitting on these people, on these poor kids, because it's not their fault, it's their parents' fault.
It is.
But, but they end up getting screenshotted. I save the photos, I flick them around via SMS to some mates of mine and go, get a look at this one.
Yeah.
And it becomes a talking piece, unfortunately. But it's the gift that keeps on giving, not only in birth and bringing a new child into the world, but it's also providing entertainment for the masses as well. So I guess
Did you
I guess they're
did you ever see the old Total Recall? You know when Kawatu's coming out of the fucking dude's chest and going start the reactor? Like, I've got some friends with kids that look like that, and periodically I put a post up and saying like, it's great. You can post about how some of your friends have a fugly baby, because no one ever thinks it's their baby, because their baby's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, no other child compares to the one that you bring into the world, and no doubt there's some chemical changes in your brain when you give birth, and when you're, even from a father point of view, it's part of you, but fuck, for everyone else, they've got to suffer, unfortunately, and that's just it's one of those things in life. Shit happens, and you got to if we're on the receiving end of having to look at those baby photos, then I guess, if that's the worst thing we've got to deal with, then life's pretty good, I guess. So I should really stop complaining.
Yeah, I mean, and look, we're already blessed with being just drop dead gorgeous. We don't really have these challenges that other people have. It's
well, that's right. I don't want to rub my perfect, genetically,
Aryan
children.
features.
Yeah, that's right. in front of everyone else's faces. I don't want to rub that in. So I've taken one for the team and made a decision not to bring it into the world.
That's good.
And I'll leave it for a few other people to do. So one less beautiful child out there in the world for people to feel jealous over.
Aren't you worried that we're not going to have enough people to keep the human race going?
Oh, I don't really care, to be honest. Like after I'm gone, I mean, whatever.
Who gives a fuck?
I mean, well, I'm pretty. I mean, my beliefs are pretty limited. I don't have a big sort of spiritual sort of set of beliefs, and I certainly don't come from any sort of heavy religious backgrounds. Although my family certainly does, but I don't personally, and so. The way that I look at it is, once I'm gone, I'm gone. It's just the lights out, and I turn to dust or dirt or whatever the hell, and that's pretty much it. And maybe that'll change as I get older and I start to panic and go, oh my god, like what's going to happen? I'm shitting myself, and maybe literally as well. Going back to your friend in the car, but I don't know. I mean, I think as I get older and I continue to mature, because I think I'm a little bit behind the eight ball when it comes to maturity, but I just think. I think everyone will work it out one way or the other. We'll either kill ourselves, or we'll find a way, and everyone will be happy. But once I'm gone, who cares, really?
Yeah, true. You can't release any more albums then, so fuck or all.
Well, that's my opinion after half a beer. So as soon as I've had a drop of alcohol, it's like, yeah, fuck it. I've checked out, guys.
Yeah, well, after I got my car shat in, I got talked into doing a rap battle last night, which and now I'm now fighting for the rap battle championship, and I've been awake all night. It's been a wild few days. Not gonna lie.
Does that work? It's sort of, because I know nothing about rap battles, but but I assume, is it some sort of freestyle thing where you've got to, like, you're basically insulting each other Eminem style, like where you're trying to find ways to diss or talk about how hard done by you are, and
it was like an all white D grade 8 Mile remake.
Yeah.
if all the
And
black
you-
dudes didn't come to the shoot. I'm looking around going, fuck, talk about cultural appropriation.
but you probably save yourself, because I assume that when you're doing it with your Aussie accent, like it's sort of like Australian hip hop, where you're not putting the American twang in there.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So I assume that would probably just remove you a little bit from that appropriation point of view.
Yeah.
I could never do Aussie hip hop because of that. Like, just
I hate it.
how ochre it is.
Yeah.
But mind you, I know some people that are heavy into that scene. It's so fascinating because they're really tight knit, and it's just I liken it a little bit to the metal scene in a way, just the way
It
they
is, yeah.
band together.
Yeah.
But when I hear it, I just I'm out. I can't do it, guys. Like, I appreciate it, and I reckon I could never do it because I can't think on the fly like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just
It's
to each their
weird.
own, I guess.
Because I've done I think 14 of these shows over here called Comedians vs Rappers, and it's like whose line is it anyway? So you get up and do comedy, they get up and do rap, and then you have like insult battles and rap battles, and you have to do crowd suggestions and all that sort of stuff. And I'm always the token metal guy that just doesn't fit in, but I have this weird ability that I can actually rap quite well.
Yeah, cool.
So I've done a bunch of those, and I've actually grown to really appreciate a lot of these guys because some of them are fucking insane. They are so talented.
I reckon I get anxiety just thinking about like how on you would have to be,
You have to be.
and how, like, I always talk about, like, especially with my Andy Social podcast, like, it's a recurring theme. I talk about being present and being mindful, and I've talked to a few people about, people that practice mindfulness and all this sort of stuff, and it's all about this sort of, when you're flustered and you're angry or whatever, you sort of stop yourself in the moment and go, what's the right thing to do here? Is this even a problem? And should I react in autopilot, or should I actually just sort of stop and have a breath and go, actually, let's just walk away?
Yeah.
But, part of that in, like, performance, whether it be sort of, musically or sport or anything that you're performing at a high level, you have to have this element of awareness, of presence. And for someone to be able to not be calculated and have to think on the fly and come up with things, you would have to be so present. You have to be so in the moment. If your mind wanders just one little bit, you're out. That's what I would assume anyway.
It's very much like that. Yeah.
Oh, I shit myself just thinking about it. I could never do anything like that.
What I would do is I would write a bunch of raps that was sort of 2 to 4 bars, and then as people would say shit about me, or I would think of shit, I'd come up with 4 bars or 8 bars on the fly, and then when I got lost, I'd kick into one that I'd already written.
Nice.
But that's because I'm a comedian playing their game. But
I was gonna say that's probably a little bit like comedy, I would assume. Like, I've never done any comedy, but you would have like basic like structure or particular stories or one-liners or things that you would use as like framework, and then you would sort of dart between them, and then you would look at the room, and obviously if you've got a heckler or someone that interrupts with anything, getting up or phones or whatever, then you can go off on a tangent and acknowledge that and be in the room with everybody, but then just go back into existing material as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's just that comfortability. It's like anything, a
bit of repetition.
Yeah.
Crash and burning a million times.
Yeah, that's actually one show where I've never fucked up the rap battle.
Wow.
Funnily enough, I fucked up a lot of stand up, but I'm going well with rap battles, which is really where I want to be.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you sort of, you have these grand plans of doing something in particular. Like you go, yep, I'm going to put a lot of effort into this. I'm going to, really sort of study my craft and get as good as I possibly can. And then you just unexpectedly find yourself in the most random set of circumstances that it creates this whole new world for you. And you weren't prepared for it whatsoever, but you just stumble into it, and then it just happens to work. And all that hard work that you did beforehand, it's not that it's useless or it never gets used, but it's just never used in the way that you originally intended it for. But I guess if you didn't do the preparation to begin with, then you probably wouldn't get into this opportunity or these types of opportunities anyway.
No, well, there's I supported Brian Posehn, I think a year and a bit ago.
No.
And I knew people that were working that tour because I'd helped them out through the metal scene for 10 years. So then this tour comes up. It's like, hey, you're a comedian. I fucking brought 30, I think there was 110 payers and 36 paid to see me. And the promoter's pretty happy about that. And it's like, you just got to fucking, I don't know, just make it happen. Like,
do you reckon like from a, I don't know what this podcast is all about. If I'm just interviewing you now, I've got no idea. But I'm just
fucking go nuts, man.
But I mean, look, I've known you for quite a few years, and I know your history sort of growing up, you know, and being in music and playing in bands and touring and all that kind of stuff. But you know, that transition to go into comedy, I mean, I reckon you could have obviously the material and your delivery and the performance of actually doing comedy is going to be the thing that ultimately separates you from other people. But no doubt you would have advantages in particular ways because you've got all that background in that hustle, that grassroots networking of just getting in people's faces and talking to people and bringing people together and all that DIY band stuff that we've grown up with. Like, and I mean, I know other people that do comedy, but they don't come from a music background, so they really struggle with the whole networking and the marketing sort of thing. But for musos, I mean, we're forced to do that because no one, you know, we don't get signed to labels, we don't get money or anything like that. We just have to work with what we've got, which is usually fuck all. So, you know, we get pretty creative very quickly. So no doubt that's probably helped you a little bit with a bit of the sort of the local promo and building some relationships with people. Yeah,
it's shit that people don't do. I said to my friends, hit up the promoter and say you'll come to this show if I'm on the bill. And however many people, 36 people must have done it because that's how many came. And the promoter's happy, I'm happy. And no one ever thought to do that. And it pissed a few people off, but I said, hey, fuck. You're going to bring a quarter of the audience, you know?
even better, because if people get pissed off, it just means that it's highlighting something that they're not doing, as you said. And it's also bringing to light something that they're lacking. You know, it's an insecurity or just a highlight of their own laziness or ignorance or whatever it is. And so when people, I always see this, like, if I do something and someone shits on what I'm doing, whether it be podcast or the band or whatever it is, and I go and just have a little sticky beak to try and work out who this person is, and you just realise that, you know, it's actually got nothing to do with me. It's all about that person who decides to get pissed off and have a whinge about it, and it's like, oh well, that's fine. Like you just stay in your little bubble and keep doing your thing, and I'll keep doing my thing.
Yeah, well, you're definitely right about the whole having been on stage so much being an asset, because most people, there's people that perform stand-up that are really funny, but it takes them a year and a half to get comfortable on stage to even be themselves, even though the material's awesome. Yeah, whereas I didn't really have that issue. Like, it's way harder, and when it goes bad, fuck me. Like, I've considered suicide seriously several times, just because you've had a bad day and you're like, oh, good, I'm going to have a gig. Then I'm going to have a good night, and then you just tank it. And then you're walking out and you hear someone, oh, that last guy was shit. Or my favourite is when it's, because I often play music. I've got a few songs in my act. And when they'll say, oh, he's good at playing guitar and singing, but he should probably just stick to that. It's usually old people. It's like, oh, awesome. So I'm failing at the thing I'm trying to do, but I do have other useless skills.
Everyone just hates you. That's the thing. So the whole world's against you. I can't. I mean, I've always toyed with the idea, and I'll probably get to it at some stage down the track where I'll do some stuff in front of people, like whether it be the podcasting or some of the other stuff that I'm starting to dabble in, where I'm getting in front of people and talking, and I think I've got a similar, I mean, I've never been a frontman, so I've never done sort of, you know, the vocal side of things, although sort of I do a little bit, but not like what you've done in the past. But, you know, I've certainly got over all those initial stage fright, you know, dilemmas and all that sort of stuff years and years ago. But I think, and you're probably in the same boat to a degree, where we could hide behind a wall of noise.
Oh, fuck yeah.
You know, there's guitars, there's bass, there's the drums, and so even if you you miss a cue or you're off a little bit, then the rest of the guys are behind you and with you and sort of keep the thing moving. And people might notice, but it's not enough for it to be an absolute catastrophe. But if you're by yourself with a mic and nothing else around you, then there's that extra element of vulnerability, which would just be pretty intense. I can't even begin to imagine what it'd feel like.
Yeah, man, it's weird. But I'm
sorry. Did I just highlight that further for you? Like that's right.
I'm a bit different though, man, because I have bipolar. So I have really bad social anxiety. So I hate being at the venue, and I like performing, and then I hate being at the venue, and then I go home. So I'm more comfortable with the actual being on stage and talking, the bit that terrifies most people, and I'm uncomfortable just hanging around trying to be normal.
Well, I don't have that sort of background to completely understand, but I would assume, just from what you said, and I'm sort of similar, just getting on stage and playing, is that although there are vulnerabilities of being on stage, and there are particular elements that are out of your control, you do have an element of control. There's an expectation. You know what's happening. You've got some structure there. As you said, you've created like certain jokes and stories and one-liners and things like that you can revert back to as your safety net. But in a normal social situation where you're standing around and then suddenly someone walks up or walks past you, and then you feel like, oh, fuck, do I have to talk to this person? Or after saying hello and yes, yeah, good, thanks. And then you go, well, what do I say now? And then you start over-analyzing it because you've got nothing to work with. You go, what am I meant to say next? And then so you start sort of over-analyzing it. Maybe that's just me highlighting.
No, you're 100%
my own
right.
Quirks.
Yeah.
Because I do the same thing. I like, especially playing gigs over the years, the way for me to battle a lot of that stuff is to drink a ridiculous amount of beer, which usually equated to a very sloppy performance on stage. And then afterwards, it didn't matter as much because a lot of the pressure had gone, but I was pretty intoxicated by that stage. But the ones where I've had to, if we're playing in Sydney or whatever, and I've decided to drive, I have to go and hide somewhere for the whole show until I'm pretty much ready to get on stage and play, because I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it having small talk with people,
Yeah.
or the conversation sort of dies off a bit, and I go, what can I talk about now? Like, what's the next topic? What's the next story? And it's so awkward.
Yeah.
And metalheads are awkward as well, so that doesn't help either. So you're usually talking to someone else who's just as awkward as you are, and you just go, oh, this is just not working at all.
Yeah, it's like, but if you work a sales job, when you're going up to talk to a customer, you've got a pretense. They're in the store, you work there. All right, we've got this common ground we're going to work between. But if I'm just at a bar, I'm like selling myself in this interaction. And I don't like selling myself, which is ironic because I do stand-up, which is the most ego-driven thing on earth. But, fuck, I don't know.
Well, no, but I mean, 100%, like, absolutely. I mean, but even doing stand-up, there's a contract that's already in place where the people that are sitting in front of you or standing in front of you have come in to laugh and to enjoy comedy. They're coming to a comedy event of some sort, and you are there to participate in that. So there's already a mutual understanding of a bare minimum of what to expect. And so you are selling yourself because you're selling your story versus the other comedians that are also on. But you don't have to sort of convince them first, oh, okay, this is comedy and I'm a comedian and this is what I've got to do. You've got past all those first things. But yeah, 100%, if you're in a bar and you're talking to someone, that person's got to weigh up and go, do I want to talk to this person? And having a look at his face, is this the face of a person that I would actually get along with? Does this person have natural tendencies that I would normally steer away from? Is the first words that are coming out of their mouth something that's actually engaging and something of interest to me, or is this person a complete moron? And so I think that when I'm about to talk to somebody and I'm thinking, is this person analyzing the first words that are coming out of my mouth? And then before I know it, I'm stumbling and stuttering and nothing's coming out. And I think, oh, fuck it, just go and slam a beer. And then who cares after that? And I'm just stuck going, yeah, music, great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, metal.
Have you ever fanboyed out really bad in front of anyone?
Oh, yeah. I'm better now. Over the years of playing and playing with some really good bands, you know, you start to calm down a little bit, and you sort of, the whole glamour and glitz about, you know, I mean, especially growing up, you know, you idolize a lot of, for me, you know, and you would be similar with a lot of these big metal bands, and you idolize them and you go, oh my God, like they seem untouchable. They seem like they're superheroes. And the further you sort of get into it and you meet people on the way, you sort of realize that they're just dudes. They're chicks and dudes, and they do the same thing. And a lot of them, unfortunately, in metal, all have really stale, boring day jobs as well, which takes a lot of that mystery and that glitz away from it as well. So it doesn't bother me as much anymore. There are probably a few people now that I'd really have to control myself. But back, I mean, over the years when I was still trying to, you know, I hadn't quite seen a lot of that from the other side. I've just done stupid stuff, just talking shit, just like desperately wanting to be friends with somebody famous and saying like the dumbest thing, just in the hope that they turn around and go, oh, you're interesting, oh, let's be friends forever. And so I'll just go, I really liked your album with the such and such and blah blah blah, and they're like, oh yeah, cool, I haven't heard that one before. I was like, oh yeah, cool, so I live in Brisbane. And they're like, yeah, cool. Yep, that's where we are now. Yep, awesome. Okay, yeah. And can I get a photo with you? Yeah. And then you walk away afterwards. You go, oh, you're a fucking moron. You're a moron. And the worst one, they were okay because I kind of lived with it. But the ones that really still eat at me are the ones where I was in the first 2 or 3 years in Lord, and still pretty green to it all. And you know, we just. Like I came into the band where the band was already it had momentum and it was doing great things. And I was incredibly lucky and fortunate that I didn't have to do a lot of that sort of hard grind that a lot of other bands had to do.
But you did that in Sedition anyway, man. It's not like you got through it unscathed.
No. And I did have bits of it, but I think my duration of time, like my time in the army,
apprenticeship
was a lot less than a lot of other bands were. So I sort of got a few lucky breaks. But those first few years in Lord, I had this warped sense of reality where I was really green, really overly excited about everything. And everything that I was doing was amazing, and not in an egotistical manner. I never thought I was better than anybody else, but I just thought everything was awesome and everything was exciting. And it helped in ways because I built really great friendships with people because I just wanted to talk to everyone and bring people in. But fuck, I remember speaking to, must have been Tom from Evergrey when they first came out to Australia, and I don't know what year it was, a couple of years after we started, Lord as a full band. Yeah. And I remember being in a bar after the show, and I was off my tits drunk, and I'm trying to sell him Lord. I'm telling him all about the band. I'm saying how awesome we are, and you know, all these great things that we're doing, and just like completely disregarding the fact that this guy's already on their like 4th or 5th album. They're on a major European label. They've played every single fucking massive European festival there is. Yeah. They've got all the video clips. They're doing all this amazing stuff. And here's little old me, Andy, like trying to not school him, but just trying to tell him how awesome my band is that he's never heard of. And he wasn't rude, but he was very short with me, and he'd had a few drinks by that stage, and he was getting, and there was a few chicks around, and there was a few other distractions there, which, I became the blowfly, just flying around his face. And then I had a sobering moment where I realized, oh, this is embarrassing. Okay, all right. And I walked off and I think I went to another guy from Evergrey and started holding his dick. But I've done that a few times over the years where I just get so pumped and so excited to talk to people, and it's always good intentions. Like I want to be friends with everyone, and when you mix that with alcohol and a bit of green sort of experience, and not sort of being more focused on myself rather than the other person, like, you know, is the person listening to me, like, are they finding what I'm saying interesting or not? Like, you know, is this of value to them, or is it of value to me to tell them?
Yeah,
so I did that quite a bit. But I think there's only a few people now where I would probably feel like that. So the main one for me is probably Farnsey. I reckon Farnsey for me, I'd have to really control myself and
I can see
try.
that.
Yeah, and I think I would have enough maturity now to be pretty cool about it. But I'd also, I'd probably, regardless of how cool, calm, and collective I am, I think I would still kick myself no matter what after I walk away. I'll still criticize myself.
Yeah.
You fucking idiot! You idiot! You should have said something else. Or why did you say that? Or why did you before you said the next sentence? Or I'll overanalyze it way too much. But yeah. I mean, what about you? Have you had any people that you've totally fanboyed over?
I've had 2 weird experiences. I'm pretty good because obviously, you know, through helping out Soundworks and that over the years and through comedy and all that, I get to meet quite a few people that are either on radio, TV, that sort of stuff. So, and you, like you said, they're just people. But so this is a bit of a tangent, but I interviewed Anvil for the podcast. Anvil, the band that, you know, the little engine that could, they finally got there. And, you know, the whole documentary was based on how they were these nice, down-to-earth guys that never forgot where they came from and all this sort of shit. So I I go upstairs and I'm like, hey, guys, how you going? And I whipped out some herbal cigarettes because I knew they were fond of those. And I said, here you go. I gave them a bowl to chop it up. I gave them a couple of pre-rolled ones. So like, here you go, gentlemen, let's have a chat. They just stared at me, never said thank you. Chatted to the guy for like 25 minutes, shook their hands. They just were really non-receptive. And then after the show, I went back up there to with the tour manager to get a photo for the press. The cunt had completely forgotten who I was, and I never even got my scissors back. So, and they were playing to like a whopping 40 people in Perth that night. So they've, you know, and then you meet, and then you meet other guys just from name the band, like, you know, from anyone from Cog to Black Dahlia Murder, or any of those guys, cool as fuck, really appreciative. And then these guys have fucking got this ego trip after being shithouse for 25 years.
I mean, and I think that's, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I overanalyze things so much, but I watched that documentary, that Anvil one, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was a cool story, the way that they mapped it together. But at the same time, I thought, man, like, I get it. Like, I get having that hunger inside you where you have these dreams, especially when you're younger, and you want to play certain stages, certain festivals, you want to play with certain bands, you want particular milestones, and if you miss them, then, you know, that it sort of eats at you a bit. But the way that they handled themselves in that documentary, and then part of it I thought maybe was put on because it needed to be sort of a little bit dramatic, but I just thought, man, like, if you can't handle yourself in those sort of situations, maybe, I mean, putting the music aside, which I'd never liked the Anvil. I think Anvil's music's pretty crap, and that's probably the reason why. Actually, I'll go off on a tangent. The start of that documentary, and they've got Lars from Metallica, and they've got Slash, and there's a couple of other people, and they're like, oh, I just don't get it. I don't get why they weren't like the next big thing. Like, maybe it was management, maybe it was just timing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going, no, the music just sucked. Like, I think the first few sort of songs were kind of good. And like, you know, from a just straight up stripped back sort of heavy metal, early 80s heavy metal sort of thing, and they were catchy and whatever. But, you know, they just got left in the dust.
The first 3 albums is maybe like 3/4 of one album of quite good songs, you know?
Yeah, and it just the music was just not good enough. And if you look at all the bands, like, especially in the span of like from like 83 to 87, like a 4-year span, the amount of classic Melbourne metal albums that came out then. I mean, you'd be hard pressed for any band to sort of stay up to date with what's going on with all those massive bands that were coming out then. So, I mean, you know, credit to Anvil, they had a hard task ahead of them. But you know, for people to scratch their heads and go, "Oh, I just don't get it. I don't get it," I'm like, I was screaming at the TV, going, "They're fucking shit. That's why the music sucks. The music sucks." So anyway, back to what I was saying before. You know, when they're in the studio and they're recording that album, and they're like, at each other's throats, and they're having a cry, and they're getting all precious about getting criticized and getting feedback about their performance.
And also, what the drummer was saying when he's saying to old mate about his singing and he's phoning it in, 100% correct.
Yeah, but that just means that I believe you can do better. You got to mirror, you got to frame that in another way. And to me, I just read that as like, or listen to it and going, yeah, he has faith in you. He believes in you that you can do more than what you just did then. So, and I thought, man, these guys are in their 50s and they're like in tears, just at each other's throats. And I just thought, this is incredible. And I thought, well, maybe that's another factor as to why they're not big. And then when they were sitting in that office at EMI Canada or whatever, and it was so freaking awkward because he's sitting there and they're playing the album and the guy listened to like 10 seconds of the song and stopped it and went, I don't know if it's gonna work in our market or whatever. It's not really what we're looking for at the moment, but we'll be in touch. And they're like, oh my God, I think it sounded promising. And I'm like, are you guys in fucking denial? Like,
this is like you trying to sell your band to that dude.
Absolutely. But it was so childlike. And I thought, I mean, they were portrayed in probably the best possible way in that documentary, and it was entertaining to watch. And I think there's some really cool messages and things in there, like, stick to your guns and believe in yourself and all that sort of stuff. But I just thought there's such a lack of self-awareness and composure, and there's this whole victim mentality that they had along the way. And I just thought, oh man, like you guys probably actually could have built a much better career and been pretty solid, not been amazing and not been a Metallica or freaking whoever else was smashing it at that time in that same sort of league. But they could have had a really solid career and done some great things. But I don't know. That's me being overly critical of another band, which I hate to do because I know how hard it is to play in a band and how mentally taxing it can be.
Yeah, but also, look, you and I both played basketball growing up, and I loved the Bullets. And no matter how much I fucking train, then or now, I'm never going to be in the Bullets. And there's nothing wrong with playing in a local league and being good. But you've also got to understand, I'm not going to be Jordan. I'm not going to be Leroy. And they need to understand they're not meant to be Metallica because Metallica is better. Well, Well,
and probably the other thing is, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe in that sort of era of music, there's probably only, you were either there, like, as in you were signed to a major label and you got the advances and you got the money and the touring support and you got to play with all these great bands, or you were nothing. Because, like, now you can be a band and you're not signed to a label, but you can still have presence, you can have a fan base, you can still make a hell of a lot of money without any major support because you've got the power of the internet, you've got distribution, you cut out the middleman, and you can monetize anything and everything. And it can get so ridiculous, but make a really good living and create a business out of the band. But back then, there would have been this air of desperation, no doubt, for a lot of bands where they're just like, it's either one thing or it's the other, and there's nothing in between. And we're either Metallica or we're in our garage and that's it, and we're not going anywhere, and everyone's gonna laugh at us. So they probably just carried that from the early '80s to now, and they're still stuck in it. And I mean, I don't know why that documentary did wonders for them. They were suddenly touring with AC/DC. They went back to Japan a number of times. They got on all these big European festivals and playing with great bands. And I mean, I've never met them in person, so I'm only going off like things such as what your experiences are.
Well, it wasn't just me, man, because as I was about to do the interview, a guy walked in and he looked devastated. He said, "Hey, man, look, I paid for a meet and greet, and I've paid for these before, and I'm never a dick. All I wanted to do was chat and ask a few questions." He's like, one of the guys wandered off after shaking my hand. The other two couldn't seem any more disinterested. And he goes, "This has just been a really, really negative experience." And I watched that poor cunt through the whole show. He looked absolutely heartbroken because these cunts were that arrogant they couldn't just give him 5 minutes and pretend to be interested. And you're talking someone that paid $120 or some shit for the privilege of meeting you. Like,
yeah, that's it.
Stand there and just pretend, cunt. You're already taking advantage of him. Fuck.
And maybe part of that, or the reason why they were in such a foul mood, was because they only had 40 payers and they had fuck all ticket sales in advance or whatever. So that
Yeah, two
the
meet and
morale
greets.
Yeah, and the morale was so low, but then you sort of, I mean, that's that whole, once again, the lacking of self-awareness and understanding, you know, we've been here, like we've been doing this for years, and we've struggled, and we've had some really good breaks, and we've been very lucky along the way, but, you know, every person that comes to us and shows their appreciation is so important to us that, you know, we understand the grind, and we're used to it, and we relish in that. And, you know, if it's one person that shows their appreciation, then that makes it all worthwhile. But, you know, but they're not even getting to that point where they're even thinking that way. They're so stuck in probably the fact that, you know, no one's rocked up, no one gives a fuck, and probably the whole tour, probably Melbourne, because Melbourne, you know, will get a good turnout no matter who's playing. But, you know, they probably just went, oh God, we're about to embark on this Australian tour, and it's going to be a fucking fizzer. So,
Well, they weren't wrong.
But, oh man, but then, you know, and that's the thing. It's that lacking of self-awareness and understanding what sort of impact it can have. I mean, we've always told ourselves when we're playing in Lord over the years, we always tapped into like regional places to play shows, to just test the water and see what it's like, and also just to have some experience and play in different places. And we've done regional shows where like 10, 15 people rock up, and it's like, oh my God, it's just an absolute train wreck of a show. But those people are psyched. They're off their tits. They've been drinking all day. They're loving it. They're having the best night. We drink with them. We play a loose show and we chill out and we have a great time. But we always tell each other, especially when, you know, one of us, and we all have our moments in the band, and it might be one guy in particular, it's really impacting them, and they're going, oh man, like, what am I doing with myself? Like, I could be making money somewhere else. Like, why the fuck am I in bumfuck Broken Hill playing to 20 people when I could be back home in Sydney and working an extra shift and doing something else? And so we always tell each other, we go, there could be one person in front of us watching us play, and we don't know. And if we don't know who that person is, you've got no idea who they know, who they are,
100%.
What they do, and they could be the right person that is the person that somebody important is listening to and values their opinion, and what good news travels fast. Or that could be somebody that represents a booking agent or a label manager or anybody, or now it's a case of, you know, these social media influencers that have got created this personal brand that, you know, they've got the attention of thousands, and you just don't know who these people are. And so for me, it's just like, you play like you're playing in front of a packed room, and you always bring your A game, and you always do the best that you can, and you just never know. And as a result of the way that they conducted themselves at that Perth show, we're now talking about it on a podcast, and no doubt, you know, you've spoken to other people along the way, and it's just, you know, it might not be this massive thing that the whole world finds out, but it's just more people out there that have got a bad experience, and it gets out there. And it might be that you know someone, or I know someone, or someone listens into this now or later on down the track, and is somebody that has to make a decision about whether to put Anvil on the bill or not. And then they go, or maybe Lord, and they go, oh fuck Lord, this guy sounds like a tool.
Hey.
But, you know, and they might just make it. They might just even subconsciously go, actually, I'm going to go with that other pick because I was on the fence, and I'm actually going to go with the other band instead of these guys. And it's as simple as that. And so I have to keep reminding myself about that when I make comments, when I talk to people, you know, the way I hold myself, my demeanor, my body language, because I just think, I don't know, I could rub someone the wrong way without even knowing, and that could bite me on the ass in a day's time, in 6 months' time, in 10 years' time. And a moment where I absolutely least expect it, where someone just hates me and I've got no idea why, which does happen. So, yeah.
So the story where I made a tit of myself, I met Bill Burr, and that was cool. It was just, he was meeting people, and this is what we're talking about, right? Guys like him, Joe Rogan, they'll hang out after a show and shake hands and take photos with 2,000-3,000 people. And then Anvil, you know, complete dicks to their people paying 100, you know, it's just ridiculous. But anyway, I met him and was so excited, and I was wearing a Lamb of God shirt, and he goes, oh, Lamb of God, man, they're fucking awesome. And I freaked out because we were having a genuine conversation all of a sudden. And I went, oh, yeah. He goes, have you ever seen him live? I said, yeah, man. I went backstage. It was fucking awesome. And then the next few moments were a blur. And then as I was walking away, I said, I'll see you when I'm supporting you.
Nice. I love it.
Love it. And then the missus got a photo and I fucking said it again. Like he was going to say, I like your gusto. Come on tour. You can be my support act. And within 20 seconds, I'm like, you are the biggest fucking loser in the world. And I was so shattered. And as we were walking out, I said to the missus, I'm so embarrassed. That was the lamest shit ever. And she just looks at me and goes, don't worry, he won't remember you. And I'm like,
you become part of his act. I met this guy with a Lamb of God shirt, and he was so convinced that he was going to like support me one day. What a tool! Now, you know what though? Like that only makes you a fool. It doesn't actually, regardless. But it will only sort of make you really feel like that if it never happens. But you know what? I mean, and you should always. I mean, it's like anything. Everyone should have these like really lofty sort of out there, goals and dreams. But can you imagine how freaking cool that story would be that you eventually do it and then you go back and you've got like this conversation that we're having right now, but also just from a story point of view to talk about the way that you the way that you had this conversation with him, what you said and how you felt, and you kicked yourself and blah, blah, blah. But then it came full circle, and eventually, at some stage, years and years down the track, that it becomes this reality, and it's so cool. So I reckon what you should be doing is that every moment of every day is that you're hustling to work out a way to be really sort of smart about it and find a way to support this guy. And you harass the hell out of him, or you go through and you research all his booking agents. I mean, Bill Burr's freaking massive anyway, so I mean, it's a pretty hard one to hit. But nothing's impossible, man. And I think that would be a freaking cool story to come full circle and go, I told him at that stage without thinking, and I felt like an idiot afterwards, but without thinking, I pretty much said that I would support him one day, and and it happened. And I reckon that would be the best story.
He's on the list.
Even if, that's it, man. That's it. And if anything, you probably needed to say it because it put you in an uncomfortable situation afterwards where you're probably having those thoughts where you're probably thinking, oh man, I have got to back myself up now and not just talk out of my ass in the heat of the moment. I've got to make it happen. And I know that when you probably said it at that time in the heat of the moment, that you legitimately felt it because you just said it. You weren't sort of just talking out of your ass, but it was just something that later on.
It was a rare moment where I believed in myself, and I went, you know what? Like I'll be real. It's embarrassing to say, but in that split second, I went, motherfucker, I'm going to be up there one day. And it's something you should never say to anybody, but it was a rare moment of honesty and positivity. And then it got destroyed with my shame.
I reckon, but I mean, that's you kicking yourself, and probably, I mean, maybe if someone else heard you that was standing around, probably went, oh, who's this wanker? But I mean, honestly, I mean, most people would probably never even have like this little spark of confidence anywhere that would even bring them to a moment where they would even say something like that. So the fact that it just came out of you in that moment, I think that's something that already separates you from a lot of other people. So it's just a case of doing whatever it takes now for however long to get into the ears of every Australian comedy booker and agent and whatever, and next time he comes out here or I don't know, overseas. I mean, I don't know how the comedy scene works. I'm just thinking about,
So it's basically the same way, man. Same shit. Yeah. You got to know people. You got to get your name out there.
And look, and you've got those advantages, man. You come from that background. So, man, I'd freaking love to see that one day, especially now that you told me that story, and I will completely forget about it after this conversation. And then one day, years down the track, or who knows, it might happen sooner rather than later, but one day down the track, I'm going to be sitting there and I'll be looking on Facebook, scrolling through my feed, looking at a bunch of shit cat photos or ugly babies trying to unfollow people. And then suddenly I'll see you announcing that you're supporting him, and I'll just go, holy fuck. and then that'll be just super awesome.
Yeah,
So,
I really
yeah.
hope that this conversation really fucking brings this into existence, because this sounds wonderful to me. I'm sick of getting assaulted every day at my job.
That's right.
Yeah.
Gotta get out. Gotta get out. Gotta get out.
When you get knives thrown at you at a certain point, you're like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Well, I mean, no doubt you're building some extra skills.
Building material.
Self-defense. Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's a silver lining, man. I mean, yeah, you're fortunate that you get to work in an environment that most people don't. I don't know what other comedians' backgrounds are, but I know some have come from sort of your traditional sort of trades and menial labor sort of backgrounds and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, for you to come from something that's pretty out there compared to your average Joe Blow, I mean, yeah, man, that's a silver lining to those knives being thrown at you or people shitting in your car.
Oh, it's like one kid on the first day on the job. We bring him in, we settle him down. We know he can't talk. He's got autism. We're like, okay, cool. We'll get him some coloring pencils. We'll settle him in. We sit him down, and within 20 seconds, he'd eaten half the pencil. And like, he was so happy. He was loving it. And we were fucking like, oh my Christ. We like, and poor kid, he is the loveliest kid, but the poor little bastard couldn't have any more wrong with him. Like, but he's blessed with really great parents, which is in my job a really rare thing. But it's great to see. But he would, if you put a knife, a hand grenade, and barbed wire in front of him, he would chew on all of them. Like, it's just, like they just don't know, man.
Well, we only
Like, when were you living in central Queensland?
Oh, early to mid 90s.
So, for what sort of years of school?
I think I came in about year 3 until year 7. I think, or yeah, roughly. It was most of primary school anyway.
So, like, when we were around, when we were at school, if there were kids with special needs, they were at a different school, and you never associated with them. So people, I find of our generation, are really weird around people with disabilities because they were always just sort of pushed into the fucking corner, which is awful. But the thing I like about the world now and schools now is that the kids are all together. They're around people with disabilities all the time, so they're just fucking people. They're a bit different, but they're people, and it's not a point and laugh thing anymore. Whereas people were really cruel years ago. I mean, they're still cruel, but it's it's I don't know, it's something hopeful about society, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember, like, we would have certain kids that would be in special ed, and they would have pretty much their own classroom, and the classroom wouldn't even be in the same buildings as us. So it was like it was a completely different, like, standalone building that was at the other end of the field that was nowhere near us. It's like closer to the primary school that was so disconnected from us. And then it might be like one day a week or a fortnight or whatever, they would come in to a class because that would be their attempt to try and assimilate them into, or us to them, or whatever it is. And kids, I mean, everyone would pack cunts. Like, we were horrible kids because it was somebody different. And they couldn't talk properly, or they'd have like little quirks or anything like that. And so, kids have got, they don't think, and they've also got self-esteem issues at times as well, and they're lacking all these people skills because they're still growing. Yeah. And they look for the weakest link. It's like Lord of the Flies, and you find the weakest link and you break it down, and it's a disgusting thing. But that comes back to people thinking that separating people with special needs or someone that's different is protecting people, when it's actually doing the complete opposite. It just makes it so much harder. So 100%. And I mean, I see friends with kids that are going through school now, and I see, or even, I mean, geez, I freak out. I don't know about you, but I freak out about how old I'm getting.
Oh, man.
I turned 34 this year, and I can't wrap my head around it. And it gets to a point now where, I'm thinking about, wow, I was like, it's like, 15 odd years since I left school, 15, 16, whatever it is. It's getting to almost to 2 decades since I've been at school. And so now you're seeing a whole nother generation of kids that are already getting close to finishing school now. So they're becoming adults. And it's like, you weren't even a thought before the year 2000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
and you're an adult now. It's incredible. But you watch the way that they hold themselves, or the way that they talk about different people with different backgrounds, and this air of like just fairness, and there's cunts no matter what. Like, you'll never get rid of them. But I think the volume of cunts, the cunt volume, the quota has dramatically decreased over the years, because we don't have those unknowns. We're not ignorant. We're far more educated. We understand. We've been forced to connect with different people and grow up with different people from different backgrounds. I mean, you would have been the same as me, man. Like, growing up in Queensland, it's like Rocky, and I grew up in Emerald for a bit as well. And I was also in a place called Cunnamulla, which is like 10 hours west of Brisbane.
A lovely spot.
Yeah, and apart from like the local Indigenous population, it was Caucasians and Aboriginals, and that's it. There was no one else. And I'm sure parts of central Queensland are a lot more diversified than what they were. But when I moved back to Brisbane for high school, suddenly there was a couple of Italians.
Yeah, there's a couple of Asian
kids. A couple of Asian kids, and I'm like, whoa, wow, these guys are a bit different.
Man.
Like, what's going on here? But then I moved to Sydney, and I lived right in the heart of Marrickville, and I'm living above a Greek barber shop. I've got a Vietnamese corner store thing, and just the heaviness of multiculturalism is just so prevalent compared to growing up in regional Queensland. And I had the biggest sense of culture shock. It was just insane. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, but Oh, I came from such a insular, one-way thinking, one path, one way of living, and that's it.
Oh man, I remember there was my primary school had about 1,000 kids, and I think there were 2 Asian kids. And I remember being 18, going to Brisbane, and saying to my friend, "Oh wow, I've never seen an Asian person working at a fast food restaurant before." Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it was like in Central Queensland. They just weren't around. But
It's incredible. It's incredible. I remember getting in trouble in year 3 at Park Avenue State School in Rocky because there was a girl in class, and I don't know what background she was, and but her last name was Chong, and one of the really popular TV commercials at the time was Cantong. So I decided to rework the lyrics to put her surname into the Cantong theme song. And I remember getting pulled out of class and having to sit on the steps outside and getting spoken to by the teacher about, being appropriate and not hurting people, because she cried and I was just a little shit. I was a little rat of a kid, and I had no idea, but she was different. She had a funny last name, and there was an ad on TV that was, based off some Oriental, seasoning sauce stuff that you pour over chicken or whatever. And I just thought, Mama's making canchong, doesn't take long. And I thought it was hilarious.
it's pretty funny.
But, it was pretty harmless in the grand scheme of things. But, for kids that are in year 3,
it's fucked.
and
That's the stuff that scars you.
yeah. But I mean, that was an absolute lack of awareness, and it was no fault of anybody's in particular, and it was just a product of environment. But I had a lot of growing up to do, moving to Brisbane and then later to Sydney, just understanding what other people do and that there's more than one way of living.
Well, I remember, I think it was about grade 3, so 94 is when I learnt that Eeny, Meeny, Mighty Mo was supposed to be catch a tiger by the toe. Now, I didn't know what that word meant, but that was what I sang.
Yeah.
This is where Pauline Hanson got off the ground, so it makes sense to some degree.
And it comes from generations living in the same place. So so these days I live 2 hours south of Sydney, down the south coast. Beautiful part of the world. And some really amazing people down here. But you've also got, like, any regional area or anywhere, but especially in regional areas where there's not as many direct access to things. Like the internet certainly, stamping out a lot of this stuff now. But, you've got people that have never left the area, and all their views, their opinions, what they say, their vocab, everything is based off their family and their immediate friends who they've known since the day they were born or when they first went to primary school together, and that's it. And then when something crazy comes into the mix, like marriage equality or any of these big social topics that become a big thing in the media or whatever, then it's so foreign to them. And no one in their life that they've ever come across is either comes from that different background or has an opinion that is different, that would challenge it. Then no doubt these people react so badly because it's just breaking their whole reality, and it's incredible. Luckily, the internet's helping a lot of this stuff, and it's forcing people to see how other people live. But yeah, man, I still see it now. I see funny little things and things that people say, and I laugh and I go, this is absolutely insane that these people still exist. But
you don't realize you become it, man, because I remember being about, it's embarrassing, but I might have been as old as 18, and someone said something about refugees, and I said they should just torpedo the boats, then they'd stop fucking sending them, which is exactly what my dad used to say. And I said that, and I went, fuck, I don't think that. And then I looked into what a refugee actually means, and like, hang on, I don't actually believe any of this shit, but you just surrounded by it all the time. Same reason I fell for religion. If there's 1,000 cunts around you that believe it's true, if they trick you enough, you believe it's true, and then away you go.
Well, that's it. And I think a lot of that stuff is it's a tribal thing, and we want to be part of a community, and the community is whatever we is closest to us. And if we grow up in a community that's, has a particular point of view or a particular code of ethics or whatever, then, we stick to that. And we, I completely appreciate, that story of, just saying what your father said, because why wouldn't you? I mean, if it's been said multiple times over the years, and, somebody that you've looked up to, and it's somebody that's seen as, well, he's literally a father figure, but it's a parent, it's somebody older, and you grow up in a situation where you look to those people, and that's part of your community, it's part of your tribe. And so, no wonder people don't think for themselves, because they don't want to lose the community, they don't want to lose that tribe. And I have such a hard time with religion and faith and all that, and for varying reasons, which we won't get into because we'll be here for like 7 hours.
Oh man, I was in a speaking in tongues like Hillsong church, so I could go for days on that.
Man. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean, I've changed over the years. I've repelled so far from it. I've come back a little bit, and I sit more of an even keel. I still have a lot of bad sort of feelings towards a lot of that sort of stuff, but I also appreciate why people stick with those communities, because I look at family that I know that are heavily religious, and they're not sort of extreme, but I still think anyone who's religious is pretty extreme with their thoughts. But I sometimes I'll throw a bombshell in there, or drop a knowledge bomb that I think's like going to totally rock their world and break them out of their brainwashed ways. And then I just think, but what would happen to them if they did wake up and they realized that, oh my God, like all this stuff is bullshit? Then all their friends, all their social outings, all their gatherings, like everything's gone. They lose their entire network of people.
It's more than that, man. It's your entire everything, because
everything.
Yeah, because like I used to cry after jerking off, right? Because I was that convinced. And it's not like you telling me not to do it. It's, oh, don't do this or you'll burn in hell. And once you give it that weight, it just fucking takes over.
Oh, well, I mean, that's even next level again. I mean, that's intense stuff. And
yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's just, I think there's value to certain types of communities, even if the views are a little bit warped and out there. And I think I've sort of calmed down a little bit with some of the stuff where I've sort of thought, as long as it's not impacting other people that aren't interested, and you're not pushing your views, or you're not hurting other people. And that certainly does happen when you've got these bigger social issues where religious faith seems to heavily sort of guide what the decision making around it. But ultimately, if you believe there's a higher being and all this sort of stuff, then that helps you have foundation and consistency in life, and a good support network of people that want to do good and help other people. And there's a lot of great volunteer and charity work that comes off the back of, Christianity in specifically, but, out of most religions. And I just think, that sort of stuff is valuable, and it's great if it's being used in those ways. But, there's obviously, there's varying, no doubt from my end, and I'm not terribly educated in a lot of it, but there's obviously different levels to how deep into certain faiths you are. And I remember just touching on some of the comments that you made. I remember going to I don't even know what the hell it was called, but there was a guy from the US that was coming out, and he was this pastor or some shit, and we went to this assembly hall somewhere in Brisbane, and I don't know how old I was. I was barely, I don't know, I would have been about 10 or 11 maybe. And it was one of those ones where, how they do the sign of the cross on your forehead? Yeah. And then you're meant to faint and fall over.
I've fallen over.
Apparently, yeah, because he's been blessed by the Holy Spirit, and he's got all this sort of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like this intense thing. And they build it, and then finally you stand up, and then you go through this thing. I remember being there, and I was a shit of a kid. My poor parents, they had a handful with me. But I got dragged along to a lot of this, and I remember standing there in the line, and this guy, this priest or pastor or whatever was coming up the line, and he was doing it, and people were falling over, and they had music playing. It was really intense, and people were crying and just so overwhelmed with it, because they're really good at this, because they build such a hype, a level of energy in the room that's become so intoxicating that if you are so present and aware, that you will fall into anything that's happening. And he came to me, and I was a rat of a kid. Like, my mum was elsewhere. I was bored. I was so happy that I finally got to stand up. I was sick of kneeling, where you do your little prayers and things like that. My knees hurt. My legs kept falling asleep. I had pins and needles, and I needed to go to the toilet, and I was just pissed off, and I'd just rather go and, I don't know, watch a Metallica video, or, go and watch one of my old Dazzling Dunks and Basketball Blooper VHS videos or something like that, and just hated the world and all that sort of stuff. And I was standing there next to, I don't know who, one of my family members, and he did the sign of the cross to me. Didn't do anything, just did it. And I wasn't there. I was elsewhere. I didn't want to be there. And he went to the next person, and then he looked back at me, and then he moved back in front of me, and then he did the sign of the cross again, and then with the tip of his thumb, he put so much force on my forehead to push me off my feet to lose balance. And then I fell back, because I wasn't positioning myself to try and be stable. I was just standing there like you normally do. But he put so much force on the tip of his thumb after he did the sign of the cross that I naturally fell back. And I saw red. I was so pissed off, because I thought, how fucking dare you make me look like I'm falling under your fucking witch spell or whatever it is.
That's just how God works, man. You just need to open your heart.
Man. And that sort of, and those sort of little things have stuck with me, and that's stuff that I haven't told that story in freaking
man,
years.
honestly,
but,
I could talk to you for hours about this, because I was up there speaking in tongues. I've been knocked on the floor, the whole thing. Yeah, it's all bullshit.
But I get why it happens, and I get why people allow that to happen, because it's not just you walk in one day and it all happens. It's a gradual build up, and it's building a network, it's building a foundation, it's building so much stuff around you, it's building a level of energy and electricity in the room that you get to a point where your mind and your body are so vulnerable that you lose conscious thought. You're not there anymore in the sense that you're not thinking about, is this going to work or anything like that. You want it to work. You've willed yourself to be a part of it, and it's such an intense thing. And I have the biggest amount of sympathy for people that have been through it and go through it, and I understand it. I get why people still believe that it's the most amazing thing to be a part of those things. I get it. I think it's crazy, and I think there's this crazy level of manipulation and all sorts of stuff there, but I get it. I totally get it. And yeah, man, it's heavy stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
I didn't expect to get down that path, but I find it fascinating though. I absolutely find it fascinating, and it certainly has knocked me off my feet. Excuse the pun, but a few times over the years, especially as I get older, because I always reframe things differently, and I look at things. I have far more compassion for people that go through all these different things growing up, and people that are still in it, and people that still have these really strong views. And I realize, going back to what you said, what we're talking about earlier about, people hating on you for doing something that someone else isn't doing, and criticizing something because they're actually shit at what they do, or they haven't bothered, or they're too lazy. And I get it. If people have strong opinions and insular opinions, or they're so backwards or caveman like with their views on the world, I just think, man, it's totally filled with fear. Just fear. It's fear generated. That's all it is. They don't want to hurt anybody. They're saying these crazy things, or these hurtful things, because they're desperately trying to protect themselves. They're trying to protect everything that's important to them, their entire world. And unfortunately for a lot of people, their world is so small because they haven't bothered to do simple things like get out of their town, or talk to somebody that might have a slightly different skin color tone, or go and have a holiday overseas that isn't Bali, or just do something, just get out and talk to people. But
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
blah blah
man.
blah. I'll get off my soapbox.
It's the bane of the world, man. All right. Well, I'm going to play a game with you now called Cunty Questions before we go. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Bring it on.
Fun for the whole
love it.
family.
Up my alley.
Yeah. So
Cunty alley.
yeah, it's a good alley. It's a bit slippery.
Cunty questions. Questions.
God fucking damn it! What the fuck?
But I'll start it off easy. So true or false? What's your favorite genre of pornography?
Oh fuck! All right, okay. But true or false?
Yeah.
Are you going to give me some?
No. I told you they were
What?
cunty. You just have to choose between one of the options, man. You got to keep up. True or false?
Oh, okay. Oh, I get you now. Sorry, I'm so slow. I've had too much of this beer. False.
Yep, fantastic. It's a good genre. I like it. I like it a lot. So one that I've been is something my dad brought up as a child, which is a weird conversation to have with your dad. But if you lose your left nut, is your right nut still your right nut?
Well, it depends on whether it depends on whether that right one moves to the center or whether it still remains in the same spot. Like I don't know how that works.
Well,
Is
you
there
need
just,
to
like,
study nuts more.
I do. I mean, I'll have to sit down tonight and have a really good look. But I don't know, when one disappears sometimes, those things do happen. You know how that happens, get a bit scared or it's a bit cold or whatever it might be. And sometimes they don't, it's not uniform. They don't just both disappear at the same time. It might just be one of them. So I don't know. I think it might still stay as your right. I think it might.
My argument's more about identity. It's been the right nut forever. Should we just say, fuck you, you're the center nut now, or does it still get to be the right nut?
Yeah, well, I guess it'd be fair on the nut to be able to say you are the nut, because
that's what I'm talking about.
Are you always rubbing in its face?
Yeah, like, oh yeah, your brother's dead.
Like, yeah, or just saying like you are only still half of what you were.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's time to move on. Put it in the past. You are the nut.
See, people get caught up on the wrong details with this, but you know where I'm coming from. I like it. This is
I definitely went down the more sort of analytical, sort of scientific, sort of factual element of it. But I like what you were doing, so I've gravitated towards that. Yeah,
that's what we're all about.
Yeah,
science, knowledge. Yeah. Hey man, look,
philosophy.
We have not fucking talked about your podcast at all.
Oh yeah.
So we've been going for ages, but just give people a bit of a rundown, give a bit of a plug. That was the whole point of talking to you, but as these things go, we've gone on some fucking tangents. So give people a bit of a rundown of both of your shows.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess before I kick into the usual spiels, I think this is what podcasts are all about, to be honest. Like, one of the big things especially with one of my podcasts being the Antisocial podcast, how do I explain this? So actually, I'll do the plug. So the Antisocial podcast, that is my main one that I've had for the last 3 or so years, 120 plus episodes or whatever, is just me learning to get better as a human being and getting out of my insular little comfort zone, the things that we've just spoken about your little circle of friends and your community, and my community being the music community. All the conversations were always around the same sort of topics, and I thought I need to get out. I need to get used to talking to weird and wonderful people. And so I've spoken to, pilots, professors, paramedics, documentary filmmakers, advocates, community leaders, all these different people that are doing amazing things, and things that astrophysicists, paleontologists, all this crazy stuff that I don't have it. I'm not a smart guy. I'm a bit of a dumbass, but I put myself in a compromising position where I attempt to try and learn and understand what they do, and I find that so amazing for me because I try to get out of my comfort zone. But one thing I've really steered clear with that podcast is I get so many mates that play in bands going, hey, dude, can I be on your podcast because I've got a new album coming out soon and we're about to do this tour, blah, blah. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm like, I will get you on the podcast to talk about anything but your band. Because, especially in music, and I've been asked to whether I want to be on the media lists for, when, I don't know, who's someone that just came out. So the Download Festival, Amon Amarth and Sabaton and all these great bands and Arch Enemy and all these amazing bands that are coming out. And I could have been on the media list to do a 20-minute interview with these guys, but I just thought they're doing the same thing with everybody else. And all we're going to do is talk about music because there's not enough time to really go off on tangents and talk shit and just see where the conversation goes. Because there's enough people out there plugging albums, plugging books, plugging products and all this sort of stuff. I don't need to do that as well. So trying to wrap that around to make some form of sense. This podcast, what we've just talked about, is awesome and perfect because it's we can talk about my podcast, but we've spent the last hour or so talking about the most unexpected things. I didn't expect to talk about shitting in cars, losing in nuts, talking about Hillsong and religion, and all sorts of weird and wonderful things, being fanboys and Anvil. Like, when would I expect to talk about Anvil in a conversation? Never.
Hopefully never,
so,
yeah.
But it's cool. And I think for, I enjoy listening to people talk like that because I think that's the magic with podcasts, is that people can listen to a candid conversation where it's just two mates or two people that are getting to know each other and just see where the conversation goes. And, I'm sure you're the same as me, where you try and have a few things that you can fall back on, sort of like, writing your comedy as well and doing your rap stuff. It's like you have a foundation as a safety net in case like the conversation dies and you're like, all right, well, here's a couple of things and I'll go back to that. But ultimately, you just talk shit and see where it goes. So
yeah, the best shows are when you never have to go to those points and it just gets there itself,
100%. And I think that's the really cool thing about podcasts. And I think here in Australia, like the US have caught on with it and they're doing amazing things. And there's huge podcasts and it's incredibly popular and every man and their dog's got a podcast. But Sydney, I'm talking like Sydney's a country. Australia is like still behind the eight ball when it comes to podcasts, and it is becoming more popular and more people are getting on board with it. But this is the thing where you've got this free format, this free medium where you can exchange information, opinions. You get to listen to people, and suddenly your world gets opened up. So talking about those stereotypical people that live in country towns that have only ever associated with the same five people, that since date of birth. Suddenly you get to listen to a couple of metalheads talk about all sorts of crap, and suddenly they get to learn. Not thinking that learn something out of our conversation, but you get to just listen to a couple of other people with their own stories and their own perspectives and opinions, and the opinions might be shit, and it might be shit talking, but you just get another color to life, and I think that's so incredibly important and cool. So now that I've crapped on there. Andy Social's been there, and it's a weekly episode podcast that comes out, and that's just like, that's my baby. That's my world, apart from Lord and the band that I play in. But the other one that I launched about 6 months ago is called Self Starter, and living in a regional town for the last few years, because I bought a house down here. That's the main driver for me to live down here. But I just noticed that it's just so hard to work and get a job, and it's a common thing anywhere in the country in regional areas, and it's a hot topic and everyone talks about it, and there's no opportunities, unemployment rate's high, there's nothing to do, blah blah blah. And I just think, man, like, everyone's got the internet, or if there's no jobs, then go and fucking hire a lawnmower and go and mow someone's lawn for $20 and just do that times 100, and it's not glamorous, it's not amazing, but you can create something for yourself. So I found this whole self-employment and small business, and even just being a freelancer and earning a little bit of money on the side, is just such a fascinating thing, and I wanted to learn more. And I thought, well, I've got this Andy Social podcasting that I've been doing for a while, and I've got a level of confidence with how to do a podcast. So I thought, let's just do that, and I'll use that as an excuse to talk to people and learn how to be self-employed and create my own business, and I'll bring everyone else along for the journey. So
that's awesome, man.
so self-starters this podcast, and it's doing really well, and that got nominated for an award. So
Yeah,
for
that's
the Australian
awesome, dude.
Podcast Awards, and I'm going to Melbourne in a few weeks to see whether I take the title of Host of the Year for the Podcast Awards, which is just fucking crazy, like just dumb. Like there's so many people that are better than me, but it's just cool to see what the possibilities are when you can freely exchange thoughts and ideas and information with other people, and you get to connect with so many awesome people and get better as a person. So yeah, that was a very long-winded plug, but I got there in the end. I was struggling
good,
a
man.
bit. I thought, where am I going with this?
And no
Yeah,
matter what
so-
happens, you can just go up to anyone and say, "Hey, did you interview Leroy Loggins?" No.
That's right.
Well, fuck off.
Well, look, this is something I'm starting to struggle with, because I go to, like, family friend events, or go to a dinner, or barbecue or something like that, and you're having a chat with people, and I'm so self-conscious about talking about things that I do. I don't even tell people I play in a band. If people know me or they're connected with me online and they see what I do, and if they ask a question, then I'll happily have a chat to them, but I never try and name drop. I never try and drop anything into a conversation. I just sit there and I just go with the flow. And the amount of times where somebody has spoken about somebody or a topic that directly relates to somebody that I've had on my podcast, and I sit there and I go, well, actually, I've spoken to the person that knows about this, and they have said this, and that is on episode 83 of my podcast, which is at andysocial.net, and you can go and check that out on iTunes and blah, blah, blah. And then I get into the spiel and I go, oh my fucking God, what am I doing? But it's amazing, because it's just, I don't know. I mean, I laugh, and when people come up with opinions of different things, like they form their own opinions without any research. They don't talk to anyone that's associated with that field or that world or whatever, and they read a headline or they watch the 6 o'clock news or whatever, and they form an opinion, and I listen to it and I go, yeah, I probably would be exactly the same if I hadn't have spoken to that one person who gave me a bit of a truth bomb and told me exactly what the reality is. And it's pretty cool. And there has actually been a time where somebody's spoken about the NBL, and I unfortunately and shamelessly have said, yeah, well, I've actually spoken with Leroy Loggins, and and try to throw that in there. And I felt incredibly dirty afterwards.
I have no problem with that name drop, by the way. I think that's perfectly justified.
Coming from a fat little Caucasian kid growing up in central Queensland.
Are you talking about me or you?
wanting to play in the NBA. I'm more than happy to tap back into that nostalgic thing and be really stoked when I remind myself that I got to sit down in a freaking food court in Sunnybank talking to Leroy Loggins. It was the most random and crazy thing ever, but yeah, it was just one of those things where I sat there and I had that moment where I felt like I left my body for a moment and went, oh, this is me, like when I'm 11 years old, watching me, in my 30s talking to Leroy Loggins. Like, who would have thought? That's pretty crazy.
That is cool, man. I had a similar sort of moment the other week. I was backstage hanging out with Ari Shafir, and I didn't fanboy out at all. We were having, like, his whole show on this tour is about being Jewish. And it was funny because he brought up a few of the points that I rant about when I go on my religious rants. So we ended up just having this really sort of philosophical conversation about religion for ages. And then he left, and I'm like, fuck, I've listened to that guy for probably 100 hours. And and that's so weird because he's just talking to me. He's never met me before. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I know a lot about you. This is odd. Feel like it's a stalker.
Weird, it's weird. And I mean, I listen to Ari, I listen to Bert Kreischer and Duncan Trussell, and obviously Rogan as well. And you listen to them talk to each other as well when they get together and they get on each other's podcasts and they talk about certain things where the fans rock up to their shows and they say, oh, how's such and such doing, like Bert's wife, or all these personal things, because they air everything on these podcasts. That's the cool thing about podcasts. You get to learn about people. It's not just the formulated routine that they've been working on, their spot or their show, whatever the fuck they call it, the terminology, their
set usually.
Their set or whatever that they're working on. It's free flow. It's just wherever it goes. And so you learn so much about it. You feel like you know them. You feel like you're part of their life. And you feel like you're sitting there in the room with a drink or whatever, just listening to them and being a part of it. So when you do meet them in person, it's almost like, I know everything about you. Like, and if you're not completely aware in the moment, you might turn around and say, oh yeah, how's such and such going? Or you'd say a personal joke that's between those guys, and you think like you're part of the joke because you've been listening to them for so long, and then they look at you and go, who the fuck are you? And you go, oh, that's right, you don't know who I am. Don't. So it's cool though, and I mean that's awesome that you got that experience, in comparison to your Bill Burr one, which honestly I don't think your Bill Burr one was too bad, and I think that's quite exciting. But it's cool that you're able to have like just a level conversation with somebody like that. I think that's so cool, and I think those are the moments that you'll look back on down the track where you just go, that's awesome. Like, okay, you might get into a signing tent at a festival or at an in-store or whatever, and you might be in line with your favorite albums and get an album signed by somebody in a quick selfie or quick photo or whatever, and that's cool, and it's a cool little memory. But the ones where you actually get to connect with somebody, and even for Bill Burr to turn around and acknowledge your T-shirt and just talk about Lamb of God for a few seconds, that is so, like, whether it's strategic on his end to try and connect to people more, or whether he's just genuinely interested, which sounded like he was just genuinely
he's a metalhead,
interested.
man. He loves it.
Yeah. And that's cool. And I think they're the important moments. It's not just you getting a signature or a photo, which I'm sure heaps of people as I do that are like autograph collectors, and they're the people that stalk the band out front of the hotel just to get a photo, then they disappear, or they're quick to get their stuff signed, and they get a thrill from that, and power to them. But for me, I couldn't think of anything more mundane and sterile than doing that, because there's no connection. You might get the moment to be in their presence and take something from them, but you're not taking anything as far as a valuable conversation. And that person, you're not leaving anything of yourself behind with that person. So even if it's just a half a sentence and a few seconds of a conversation that's not on script, I think that's incredibly valuable. I think that's the magic, man. And I'm incredibly jealous that you got to do that with Ari Shafir. He's one of those special dudes.
It was nice because it came about. I really pushed hard to get that support slot, man. I fucking hammered it. Had people hitting up the promoter, like the whole box and dice. I went hard, and one of my best mates in the scene over here, Sean Conway, got the spot, and I'm like, hey man, he deserves it more. So it was like, if anyone else could have got it, I would have wanted it to be him, and he got it. So he knew how much I wanted it, so fucking took me backstage to meet him and shit. It was just fucking, it was cool. That's cool, man. And you got an amazing story out of it. So, and I think that's making the most of the situation, and for you to be able to do that is just, I mean, that's just one little part of a bigger chapter that you're going through at the moment, and that will eventually lead to, another chapter or the later on in the book where you eventually support Bill Burr. Yeah, and you guys, when you eventually support Metallica, we'll get there, man. Man, I don't know. I don't know if you see some of the posts I put on Facebook, but every few months I usually put a post up on Facebook saying I just had a dream about something, and the dreams are just two topics. There's two topics only. It's Metallica. Yeah, I've seen that. It's usually supporting Metallica, or for whatever reason I am like the fifth person in the band playing guitar, but the guitar never works, or there's no strings, or the band disappears and I'm on stage by myself, or suddenly I don't know the songs. They start playing Pink Floyd instead of Metallica. I've got no idea what's going on, or I don't rock up to the venue, or the car breaks down, or whatever it might be. It just never happens. Like, it's never the glory moment in my dream. It's always the struggle to get there. And I'm always on the brink of success, but I never get there. That's one, that it's recurring dreams that are based around almost getting to that glory moment with Metallica. The second one is the NBA. I am always freaking dreaming about the NBA, playing in the NBA, hanging out with NBA players, just being around them, getting acknowledgement from them, being mates, me dunking it, which I've never been able to dunk because I'm short up, and I was just a fat, short white kid, and I just didn't have any athleticism whatsoever. But just all those types of dreams, and it's always, once again, never quite getting there. So, I'd be
trying to get in someone's face and trying to be mates with someone and they brush me off, or, I would try to play and my shorts would fall down, or I'd throw an air ball, or I'd think I'd dunk it, but then I wouldn't, and then everyone would laugh at me, or, it would always be something like that. So these reoccurring dreams and these two sort of narratives that continue to go. So one day will get to support Bill Burr.
Thank you.
One day I'm going to play in the NBA and I'm going to support Metallica, or
on the same day.
Yeah, on the same day, and maybe it'd be like what's his name, John Marshall from Metal Church or whatever his name was. That when James burnt his arm in like the late '80s or whatever, or there was 2 occasions he broke his arm on the Puppets tour, and this guy filled in on guitar while James just sung. And then I think it was on the Black Album tour, it was just like 90 or 91 or 92 or something like that, and he got burnt by the pyros, and he came back in and filled in on guitar. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to come in and fill in on guitar, so at least then I'm not replacing Hetfield. Hetfield can still be on stage, and I'll still get to hang out with Hetfield. But in the afternoon, I'll go and play an NBA game before I go and jump on stage with Metallica.
That's
so
good.
It'll happen. It'll happen, and then that's when I'll write my book.
Yeah, cool. Fuck, man. That's we've really talked a lot of nonsense.
Good nonsense.
It's been good, man. Thanks heaps. I really appreciate it, dude. I've had a lot of fun.
Not a problem.
Anyway, we haven't really mentioned it, but you do play in a band, and we did do an interview about the band, so I'll throw that up at the end of this chat for anyone that wants to hear about that.
Yeah,
because that's quite important too.
yes, it's very important, and my fellow bandmates would not be impressed that I've just spent a whole bunch of time talking about shit and haven't actually plugged the band. So yeah, go and check out Lord if you like a bit of old school heavy metal. You can go and do that. So or just listen to the interview after this, and you'll get all the goss
for sure. And are you guys? Do you have the rights to your songs now? Are we able to throw a song up with the episode or not?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah,
which one would you like to go with?
Oh, okay. Yeah, you put me on the spot. So maybe just to be, because I'm a bit of a businessy type of marketing type of guy, I'll give you one of the tracks from the new live album, and
sick.
And we'll throw that up. So I'll pick one of those ones. I don't know which one yet. So
I'll
work that out.
Is Footsteps in the Sand on there?
It is. All right. Yep, done. So
beautiful.
That's it. So I'll flick you Footsteps in the Sand live at Progpower USA, Atlanta, Georgia.
Fuck 2016. Yeah. All right. Get moist with Lord. Thanks very much, Andy.
Thanks, mate.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. And yeah, all the best with the podcast awards.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Band Talk.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Matter of Faction. Today on the show I have Andy Dowling, host of the Andy Social Podcast, host of the Self Starter Podcast, and most importantly, bassist for Lord. How are you, man?
Oh, good. I love that intro. Yeah, good yourself.
Oh, good. I've got to give it some gusto, man. I've got royalty on the line.
Love it.
So, dude, the latest release live at Progpower. How's that been received, man? It seems to be going gangbusters.
Yeah, really good. I'm more stoked that we finally actually got it out there. I didn't even care whether anyone cared. Like by the time it was out, it'd been sitting there for about 18 months after we actually did the show. And just a number of things, just trying to get everyone together, and then we had to just try and clean it up, and because we did a video as well as audio, so we had to make sure that sort of from a video point of view that it was up to standards. We had to do a lot of cleaning up and all that. So it was a bit tedious and painstaking, but so when we finally released it and people started to listen and watch it, it was just such a relief. So I'm like, oh, thank God it's out there now. And now we can go back and start working on the next album. So that's sort of where the motivation's been. But yeah, like the response has been really good, and especially from the United States, where all the Progpower people went and saw us play. I think we've been really stoked with the feedback so far.
That's awesome. What's crazy is I love being able to buy a DVD of a concert I was at, and for you guys, like you'd be one of the headliners at a festival like that, and also for you to be able to crack a beer and watch yourself doing it. That's fucking sick.
Like, a bit of the Twilight Zone. It's like, is this even happening? Yeah.
Because I mean, I've seen Lord on all manner of stages, from in front of 60 people back when everything was kicking off, to supporting Queenstrike, and then to see you guys where you're at now. It's just awesome. It's great for Australian metal, and it's fucking good for you guys. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Just in like, I guess the main thing for us is to be able to put something out that's of that quality, so people can watch us play on a big stage and with a good crowd, and get a decent set where everyone gets a real taste of the band. So it's sort of like I mean, it sounds a bit wanky, but it's sort of on historical record now. So even if in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, people can hopefully still access it and still relive some of it or discover it for the first time. So it's just cool that it now becomes timeless.
Yeah, for sure. And as much as I loved the Dungeon live DVD, it was limited by its time and budget. Whereas this is, you can hold this up against any live release that's coming out now. Quality wise, it's fucking top notch.
Oh, cheers.
And obviously, man, there's no need to bullshit you. I wanted to talk to you for a reason, man. I dig your shit.
No, that's cool. And it's good. I mean, we waited so long to do a live album, like since we changed the name of the band, and people have been on our backs pestering us for years, just going, come on, get something together. And it was just, it was never the right time or the place or the money or whatever. And we just knew that, I mean, we did a sort of a bit more of an amateur version, 12 years ago now, and that was just a bit of fun, and it was a bit more of a fan recorded thing. But we just really wanted to hold out until the right opportunity popped up. So when this one popped up, we thought, all right, we're all in. We can't half-ass this. We've got to go all in or nothing.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, it's definitely paid off. I mean, and also it's got to help having Tim on board with all of his video editing skills and all of that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So from a like sort of post-production point of view, he's just been a godsend when it comes to like sort of getting in there and cleaning it up and bringing it up to standard. I mean, we were really lucky because we had an awesome camera crew and production there at the festival to capture it all. But that stuff's all great on its own. But I guess the thing that is the point of difference is that post-production. So yeah, Tim is our secret weapon. He's our asset.
Oh, for sure. And also, I mean, for you guys, I'm sure wanting to push further into Europe and all that sort of thing, if, this is a good thing to be able to say, hey, check this out, fuckers,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we've got some history over there with the Dungeon stuff, but with Lord, it has been harder, and I think for various reasons, and I think some of it's just our own circumstances and how the band's evolved. But now, like we're in the midst of finishing off the writing for the next album, and we'll start to look at options to see what we can do to shop that around. And I think part of that shopping or that bargaining tool with potential labels will be the live release as well, just to sort of demonstrate or prove what we're capable of, and hopefully that'll be an additional incentive to work with us.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think it's weird too, because obviously at the start Lord was the new band from the guys from Dungeon, whereas I think now you're getting to a point where it's like, oh cool, did these guys come from another band called Dungeon? You've got this whole new generation of fans, if you know what I mean. Oh
yeah, definitely. And a lot of I mean, we spent quite a few years initially making sure that we acknowledged the past and making sure that the Dungeon hardcore fans had every possible opportunity to warm to us, and we made sure we tried to make those connections. We didn't brush any of that history off, and we still celebrate that. I mean, with the same band with a different name, but now, and I've had a few instances of this quite recently where I've spoken to people and they're completely oblivious to the past of the band, and it's just all about Lord, and they discovered it, through some of the last studio albums and seeing us on tour across the country or overseas, and it's really cool that, I mean, it's obviously taken quite a few years, but it's just great to see that there's just people that continuously discover the band and then go, oh wow, there's like this giant back catalogue before Lord as well. Oh, what is this? And then so that's fantastic, and it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, for sure. As a music fan, that is the best. When you go, holy fuck, they had this shit too, and then what a back catalogue to get surprised by. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, and I mean, we made a big point a few years ago with going back, and it was the 25th anniversary for the band overall since day dot, and we went back and re-recorded the four the 4 main studio albums and releases and a bunch of bonus tracks and everything in a box set. And a part of that was to sort of celebrate, but a lot of it was sort of strategic to try and recapture the rights for a lot of that music, which was owned by a whole bunch of different labels from all over the world, and they all had different rights in different territories, and it was a complete mess with just really crappy agreements at the time. And so for us, by re-recording all this music and then putting it back out there, suddenly we've got legal access to this complete back catalogue as well now. So it sort of gives us an opportunity to repurpose a lot of this music and give it a second lease of life, and give it, some of it didn't deserve or didn't get its deserved spotlight at the time. So we've sort of now we've got a whole back catalogue that we can give proper spotlight to a lot of these older songs, which just didn't get the attention that they deserved initially.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, and also the early Dungeon stuff production-wise, compared to what your capabilities were when you did the re-release of those albums, man. Jesus, like, there's so much more punch, and it's good.
Yeah, and I think, there's always going to be the purists, and I'm a bit like that with a lot of my sort of old school metal and stuff that I grew up with and discovered for the first time. It's nostalgic, and you've got an emotional connection to it. So we always sort of hold the originals pretty close, and we respect them. But to be able to go back to these songs and just pull them apart and keep their true integrity, but to bring them up to sort of like the current production standards that we've got. And for Tim especially, I think it's been quite sort of a bit of a therapeutic sort of process for him to go through, because suddenly he can add all these things that he wanted to do back, in the 90s and could never do it because of, budget and time. And now with his own studio, he can sit back and go, oh, that's right, I wanted to add that particular piece in there. Well, I can do it now, and no one can stop me. So it was quite a good thing at the very least, it was good to get that all out of his system. But it's cool to be able to give them a second lease of life.
It's good to see something good come out of something shit. I mean, it's a shame that it was such a clusterfuck with all of the rights to all of the music, but it's nice that, I guess, Tim got to do it all the right way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a common thing with a lot of bands, and a lot of bands weren't as business savvy as what they are now, and that's just because you relied on record labels, and there was the blind faith that the label would save you and take you to stardom, and so often you just sign into these crappy deals and not realise and suffer the consequences later. So yeah, I think not unique, but definitely an absolute pain, but it's good to sort of get a bit of a win now and leave a lot of that in the past.
Well, something else that Lord's always done, I think more so than back when Dungeon was around, but obviously Dungeon did it as well, is you guys are very big on limited release stuff for the fans, which I love because I'm a collector. And I love the fact that you do that, because it gives, from a marketing perspective, it's clever because, there's only so many of them, but you guys don't overcharge. You're not dicks about it. You give people what they want, and it always fucking sells out. So it's I like that. You guys are giving people cover EPs. You're doing all this weird shit, different versions of songs. Like it gives people another window into the band, which is it's interesting and it's good. It's another layer.
Yeah, and I've sort of looked at it. I've tried to rebrand the terminology with a lot of merchandise and physical CDs. I just call them souvenirs now. And for fans, and I've got a Spotify account. I've got most of my music's digitized, and I still have CDs and vinyl and everything, but nowhere near like the same as what it was years ago. And so we respect a lot of music preferences, but there's a lot. I mean, we're lucky in metal because metal fans are still purists when it comes to collecting, items and building collections and making sure they get every single version of everything. And so we want to always make sure that we still provide a little bit of that without blowing our budget and, over printing and getting these mass runs and then realizing, oh shit, there's actually not the demand there used to be. But the limited edition thing, I mean, you're right. I mean, we'll release something in a limited quantity, and we'll just keep it at the normal price of what you'd expect to pay for, whatever it is, like a CD or whatever. Yeah. And then, I mean, we always tell them and tell everyone, the value comes later on. I mean, we've got some EPs that are out of print and they've been out of print for quite a few years. And I mean, we had one, a few months ago, and it was on eBay, and someone nabbed it for $350, and it was just And I just laugh and I go, this is ridiculous. But then in the end, I mean, that's the importance of music that it has to particular people and the passion that they have to it. And I think that's really cool. And that's not us dictating the price. That's the audience dictating it.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
that's really cool. And I'd much rather put that in the control of the people that love our music rather than us putting a high price point on something to begin with. And the other thing is, like, quantity is important, but also now we're looking at time as well. So for us, we want to make sure that, the people that actually support us and drop everything and buy our merch and our music and everything like that are rewarded in the sense that it's limited in quantity, but it's limited in time. And if you sit on it for too long and you get a little bit sort of lackadaisical about it, then it's a case of you snooze, you lose. And then the people that actually did buy it, they're rewarded because they get something that's even more exclusive. So we're toying with that at the moment, but it's just something that you want to sort of reward the people that support us as much as we can. So that's one of many tactics that we're trying anyway.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's really cool. I really like that. And it's good to see that you've just, Lord or Dungeon were never a band to follow trends. I mean, when Dungeon was starting out, like in the 90s, was there any more style of music that was less mainstream? And I like the fact that it's always been a sound that you've gone, all right, this is our sound. There's never been a rap phase or breakdowns, or it's always, you know what I'm saying? It's never been a reflection of what's going on around it.
No, absolutely. And I think we've always had we've been really lucky, especially since we changed the name of the band, because I think Dungeon sort of pigeonholed us a little bit more so than what Lord has. But, we all come from various musical backgrounds and we all love different stuff. And the cool thing about it is we've been able to blend everything that we love in there unashamedly and but still have this foundation of, what is our core sound? What are we all about? What's our sort of, our core ethic to the band, and making sure we stay true to that, but still have the freedom to go, fuck it, let's try this. And as long as it sticks to our foundation, then that's all that matters. And as long as we're consistent and we're not completely screwing, ourselves over or the people that listen to us, and we do it. And luckily a lot of that's just natural and we don't have to sort of calculate it or think too much about it. But, we've always, for years, even Dungeon sort of playing was one of the sort of the only bands, even sort of in the metal scene. There's a few guys out there doing sort of similar stuff, but, few and far between. And especially when sort of Lord came on, there wasn't as many sort of, melodic metal bands or power metal bands. There's, a bunch of thrash bands that were around, but there's been obviously a massive surge of that in the last few years. And there's so many great melodic and thrash bands that are out there now. And that's fantastic. But we've done all sorts of weird mixed bills over the years, where I think Dungeon actually supported Mayhem at one point, years and years ago, and that was just an indication of how the band just didn't care, and we were so confident, and not cocky, but just confident in what we did, and we just knew that it didn't matter the crowd in front of us. We could put on a show, and even if get a couple of projectiles that get thrown on stage, it's still something that's entertaining enough that even the most elitist black metal fans or whatever will maybe slightly half uncross their arms and go, oh, that was actually kind of humorous, and I kind of half dig that. Like, it was a little bit cheesy, but that sort of entertained me sort of momentarily. So And we've always sort of done it with Lord. We've played so many extreme metal bills and then tried our hand on the other end of the spectrum with a lot of sort of sleazy rock band bills, and some of it's hit and miss. But I think for us, it sort of rings true to what we're all about. It's just that we're not too concerned about anyone else around us. We just do our thing, and if you love us, fantastic. If you don't, then that's cool.
Well, most people that see you love you, man. You're a fucking good band. So, how far away are we from a new release? Or is that too hard to tell? It's been the burning question for probably the last 3 years, really. Everyone keeps asking me, sometime later in the year, maybe. The answer is sometime later in the year, maybe. But we're getting closer to finishing off sort of the core of the whole album as far from a writing point of view. And I think that's usually the hardest thing, is to try and understand what the album's going to sound like and what it's going to look like. And once we've got that, the recording aspect, we're lucky that everything's in-house. We've got our own studio, so
We don't have to sort of wait for availability and time and budget and things like that. We can absorb a lot of those costs. So the recording aspect, I don't think will take too long. Just depends on how much of a perfectionist Tim wants to be. And I know the last album, which is quite a few years ago now, he came out of that pretty worse for wear, and then I think he took on a few extra sort of mental scars and whatnot. But hopefully it'll be a smoother process this time. But the writing of the music's always been the hardest thing. That's taken a while, and we're pretty close to having a foundation there. So I would hope that by the end of the year we'll have something out. I mean, we're going to start playing shows again as well. So it's been a long time coming since we've done a proper Australian tour. So we've got to get back out there soon.
Fantastic, man. Well, we hope to see you over in Perth and all around the country. And for anyone listening, check out fucking nearly said Dungeon there. Jesus Christ.
That's all right. Same band, different name.
Lord live at Progpower. I can't remember the number. It's Roman numerals.
It's 2016. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Right. I teach maths, by the way. This is what's scary.
I love it.
I looked at it and I'm just like, not work, not reading it. Nope. All right. Thanks very much for listening, guys. This has been Matter of Faction with Andy Dowling from Lord. Cheers.
Thanks.
Hypermanic Noize.